Kalimera, kalispera, kalinichta, no matter where in this wild, wacky, and sometimes wonderful world you might be. Thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. It's a new week. It's a blank canvas. Let's paint pictures and let's tell football stories with these two absolute legends.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
All right, kids, let's rock and roll. Broadcasting at an unusual hour on a Monday, 4 o'clock in the UK. Clocks have gone back. We are having an afternoon show instead of an evening. So a lot of you will be catching up on replay. And I'm delighted to welcome back two of my favorites. And don't say I don't do nice things for you. Welcome back to Squad Central. Firstly, Sports Journalist of the Year award winner. I don't know, if I sat here and talked about all the awards Mr. Henry Winter has received, it'll be the entire show. Mr. Henry Winter, welcome back to Squad Central.
Thank you for inviting me, and what an absolute build-up. I'm honoured. I'm still recovering from the game yesterday. I've just got back. Anyway, lots to discuss.
There is lots to discuss. Talk about build-up, yes. And of course, one of your favourites, one of my favourite humans as well, host of NBC's Premier League coverage and host of It's Called Soccer, new podcast with Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher, the legend that is Rebecca Lowe.
Oh, thanks, Soph. Lovely
welcome
to be
back.
Thank you.
Good to have you back. And of course, welcome to the Squaddies as well. At ease, everyone, at ease. Let's get stuck right in. Big news today. So we've got Henry for about 25 minutes and then we've got Rebecca for just a little bit longer. So I'm just going to dive right in. No big news today, but the inevitable has happened. And I'm delighted that you two are here to give your thoughts. Henry, Ten Hag sacked, 2 trophies, league form, definitely the dagger in his managerial career at Manchester United. United 8 managers since Sir Alex left. It's not easy. Replacing legendary managers. Arsenal finally kind of there, Liverpool off to a flying start, but Ten Hag's tenure is over.
Yeah, and rightly so. I think the clock was always running from the summer when obviously he won the FA Cup. That was great, but the club still were going and talking to other people. And in any walk of life, if you know that your employers are not completely convinced by you, then what sort of message does that send in the dressing room? There were communication issues with Ten Hag. I mean, I've interviewed him and he's very engaging, but he doesn't always communicate well. His English is okay, and he's just not particularly convincing. And I think at a club like Manchester United, with the huge scrutiny internally and externally, you've got to be a fairly strong individual to handle that, a Sir Alex Ferguson type. And also his recruitment, £200 million spent in the summer. Was anyone actually, they've proven that they're worth it? Obviously they've had injuries, and I think then you look slightly longer back at Anthony and all these players that he knew from Dutch football. They've just not delivered. So financially, no identity with the football, no real leadership in the dugout or on the pitch. How convinced were the players that he was the right man? And Ineos, well, they had to act, and he would have gone earlier at any other club, but the Manchester United fans, in fairness to them, you know, they were pretty patient and pretty loyal, but you know, they must have been sitting on their hands in utter frustration at the team.
Rebecca, you know, one of the things Mikel Arteta was challenged with was having to not only change what was happening on the pitch, but culturally. Arsenal 2.0, kind of born under Mikel Arteta and Edu, given total control to be able to reform the club. That just didn't happen at United under Ten Hag, did it? They were never able to recreate or create a new identity, and the cup's just not enough. United are not just a cup winning team.
No, and it's funny because actually I think he was given too much power, as Henry talked about there with the players that he bought, the amount of money he spent. When you look at the squad, guys, all you're looking at is former Eredivisie players, former Ajax players, players with the same agent as Erik ten Hag. And I think, and it's really interesting that Henry mentioned communication there, because we did an interview yesterday pitch side with Arne Slot and also Dutch. And the communication is night and day. The Arne Slot came across to John Champion and Graham Rousseau, who were pitch side for us yesterday. He was talk about engaging. The guy answered every single question. Maybe his English is a bit better, which is kind of odd considering he's only been in England a few months. But his communication was in stark contrast to what we've seen. I don't think Erik ten Hag, Sophie, had the gravitas to be the Manchester United manager from day one. He just didn't feel right. I'm sure it's super superficial of me to say when he would come in with his flat cap and his rucksack, like it just, no socks. I just can't. It just didn't look like a Manchester United manager. Then you've got the recruitment situation. The club, though, I mean, if you didn't know this was being run by Ineos, if no one told you, you would simply say that what's happened in the last year is a continuation of what happened under the. This feels exactly the same as the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer situation when everybody was like, come on, put him out of his misery. This is ridiculous. And so now they've finally done it. But what was different about West Ham away to Tottenham at home? I'm told that they decided after Tottenham at home and were taking some time to talk to Ruud van Nistelrooy's agent, which, by the way, is another whole situation, which is very weird. Who brought in Ruud van Nistelrooy? Because if Erik ten Hag did, then that's not a great move from Van Nistelrooy, is it? And if the club brought him in, why are the club doing that? So, oh my gosh, I think the optics are terrible. The PR is terrible. So Jim Ratcliffe has not hit the ground running in a good way, in any way, shape or form since he started at this club. Yes, he's put a good football structure in place in terms of all the people like the Baradas and the Brailsfords and the Wilcoxes, but he's made such a huge error with this situation that the season's over already.
Yeah, I mean, the communication for Emery at Arsenal was something that people always questioned. And you can see that since then, Emery's evolved, Henry, and kind of learned. So where do Manchester United go from here? There's rumours about Xavi. Interested to hear Rebecca's take as well on Gareth Southgate, who I think gets a lot of disrespect. And maybe somebody of his ilk or stability, what he could bring to the table. What's your take on where United go from here?
I think if Manchester United appoint Gareth Southgate, you will see the first turning of the fans towards Ineos. They've obviously been very patient. I take Rebecca's point about Jim Ratcliffe maybe acting sooner. I think in fairness to him, he was trying to get the football structure in place, which you allude to, and obviously, you know, Barada and particularly Dan Ashworth to get him in. I think in fairness to Ratcliffe, he wanted to, you know, the football experts in place, and it's only been the last sort of 3 or so months. They would obviously probably had an influence before then. But yeah, Southgate, obviously he's got the connection with Ashworth. He's nice. He's particularly his biggest fan with England, because I'd never thought that he would get England over the line. I thought he'd change the culture. His communication, he is fantastic, and he'll say all the right things. He manages upwards. He'll be good with the fans, but the fans will look at him and think, you know, we need a killer as a manager, which is what England are trying to do with Thomas Tuchel, a serial winner, someone who doesn't, you know, stand by and watch games drift. He actually gets involved in them. He makes key decisions. He's decisive. So, I mean, Southgate, I mean, that will be lively. If they appoint him, the fans will go, partly because of the England-Manchester United thing, because, you know, they always sing about Argentina. There's an element of that. But also, I think they just don't rate him.
Rebecca, Man United fans are going to want the sexy signing. You know, for a while they've wanted someone like Zidane. You know, there's even some United fans that look at what Emery's done at Aston Villa. You know Gareth, and you followed his career, of course, being a Palace fan as well. There's a connection there. What's your hunch? What do you think United do next?
Oh, what do I think they do next, bearing on what they've done for the last year? I've zero clue, but I completely agree with Henry. I don't think Southgate is a good idea. From anybody I speak to near the club, it would. I mean, apparently they were dancing in the streets this morning. They'll be rioting in the streets if they give Southgate the job. Honestly, I don't think that's a good plan. And if they give him the job, they're not listening. And they've got to listen to a certain extent. They have to listen to the fans. Xavi, maybe, but I think he's supposed to be on his year out, isn't he? And I'm not sure whether he'll want to end that early. The big link at the moment is Thomas Frank, who I adore. I think Thomas Frank is one of the best humans I've ever met, best in football, best Premier League managers I've ever met in terms of communication, normality, all-round integrity and good humor, not to mention really blooming good at his job, by the way. The problem with him is that he's never managed big players. He's never managed in the Champions League. I'm not sure Manchester United deserve Thomas Frank, to be quite honest. I think he's almost too good for them as an entity. So I don't think he'll get the job. I don't think he'll be sexy enough to get the job. I think they'll probably stick with Ruud van Nistelrooy until the summer, and then try and get somebody who's easier to get in the summer. But isn't it interesting? We've watched, haven't we, for years, the likes of Pochettino go one place, Tuchel go one place, and they've just sat there with this guy that nobody wanted. It's like, what are you doing? Oh,
yeah. And Hansi Flick, they've had these. I feel like it's the Arsenal moment when maybe they held on to Wenger too long. Pep was there for the taking. Just these missed opportunities and missed moments. Right. Enough about Manchester United. Let's talk about the greatest team in the land, and that is the Arsenal Football Club. Henry, you were at the game yesterday. Stevie Nicol was on the show last week, and by the end of the show, he had me really worried about this match. I always felt like Mikel Arteta, given time, kind of figures out the Arsenal jigsaw puzzle when there are issues, and he's proven that, especially over the last couple of seasons. I want to start with the positive first before I get your guys' take on something that is at the heart of Arsenal fans' thoughts, and that is Bukayo Saka. Beforehand, I think one of the reasons why we were all worried was that it was Bukayo going to play, gets his 50th goal. He's just a treasure. He's a national treasure that Arsenal loan to England every now and again. He's such a special player. And it was proven, especially in that first half, just how important Bukayo is to this team. And I think he's the type of player that opposing fans love as well. But do you think he gets enough respect when there's always the conversation about Foden and now Cole Palmer? What did you see yesterday, and your take on Bukayo achieving that 50-goal landmark?
Just on your first point there about Cole Palmer and Foden, I don't think anyone, I don't think any England manager coming in would actually drop Bukayo Saka from the right. I think Cole Palmer is a number 10. We've seen it with Chelsea. He's better inside. Foden, I don't see him starting necessarily under Tuchel. But Bukayo Saka, I mean, I obviously cover England, and there's never any hesitation on any one part, around the England camp, even with probably a new manager coming in, who would doubt Bukayo Saka's influence. So, he's embedded with England. I thought it was interesting that it was Ben White's pass that released him. I thought it was a fantastic pass. Andy Robertson must have known what he was going to do. He must have known that he was going to sort of cut inside. I know we're seeing more elements to Bukayo's game. He can go on the outside, he can go on the inside. He's winning headers. He's obviously fantastic on the ground. He's dribbling. He's laying it off first time. And we are seeing the flourishing of a fabulous talent which Arsenal has developed, and all hail end on that. But yeah, I mean, just what a player. And that first 45 minutes, and of course there were some doubts. I was in one of the nearby pubs just chatting to people beforehand, and they were saying, "Oh, do you think Bukayo Saka and Jurrien Timber will play?" I said, "Well, the one thing I've learned from going to press conferences with elite managers over the last 30 years, unless they're in a body bag, they're going to play." Really, I've spent so much time covering Manchester United and on Sir Alex Ferguson. They all play those games, and Mikel Arteta is completely right to play those games and either hint that someone was available or not available. Why should he show his hand early to the opposition? So yeah, it was great to see him, and he was probably always going to fade, but he just gave them that outlet. And Andy Robertson, Scotland captain, good player. He was absolutely given the runaround by Bukayo Saka. One final thing I will say about him, I've spoken to the club about it, and I understand their concerns as a club and as a team. He doesn't get enough protection from referees. I know all fans say that about their players. I'm sure their Manchester City fans will say that about Foden and what have you. But Bukayo Saka gets a bit of a kicking. I think was it Nunes who took him out at one point? You're thinking,
yeah.
And that looks almost deliberate, because it wasn't in a, why did Nunes have to drop 50 yards to go and do that and barge him over? So I do worry about that. I don't think he gets enough protection. And, whoever you support, you have to look after these special talents.
Rebecca, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in because it takes quite a lot to barge him over as well, Henry. I think he's for the stature that he is, he's small, isn't he? But my goodness, is he strong? The way he holds the ball up and he holds himself, it takes a lot to push him. So you can imagine if he wasn't as strong, he would need even more protection. I totally agree. He is, I think, underappreciated by club and country. Maybe not by club, by country. I think he is as you say, an absolute national treasure on and off the field. For some reason, I don't think he does get enough respect. I don't know what that is. I couldn't love him more. Whenever we've spoken to him, whenever we've been in his company, the guy, I was about to call him the kid, but he's not a kid anymore. The guy he just oozes sunshine in everything he does and the way he is. And he's a sort of player in 15 years, 10, 15 years time, we'll look back and be like, one of those, he was actually better than we realized at the time. He is ridiculously consistent, hardly ever injured, really. Just always delivers, a big game player as well.
Yeah,
I think.
I mean,
just jumping in,
go on, Henry.
Just on the character, having seen him with England out at the Euros, we spoke to Southgate about the pressure of one of the the three black players who missed the penalties at the Euros against Italy: Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Bukayo Saka. Bukayo Saka at the start of next season, when he was warming up at Brentford, he got an amazing response. So I take the general point about appreciation, but I think there is such admiration for him as a human being and as a character. Obviously, the sympathy because of that horrendous abuse that he got. But then when you went out to Germany, he was absolutely wanting to take a penalty, whether it's for cathartic reasons, whether it was just because he wants to do the best for the team. But yeah, special person and very special player.
Love that. And to see him wearing the armband as well, I don't know, it makes me feel like a mum. I just want to wrap him up in cotton wool, put him up on my windowsill and keep him safe forever and ever. Yeah, very special player. Okay, this is the elephant in the room. And the squaddies said, if you don't ask them about this, you're going to be in big trouble. So here we go. And I've heard both of your takes, and on the show, Rebecca, as well, with Robbie and Tim and Lee and everyone over the last few weeks. And Henry, I know that you talked about the Saliba sending off and Arsenal fans. But let's talk about the officiating in the Premier League. It's definitely an issue. I mean, I'm not one to blame referees. I'm not one to kind of look at our performances. You're always, if with 11 men on the pitch, you always have the opportunity to win a game. But Henry, I'll start with you. There's definitely been, the Declan Rice red card. I think we could say that was silly. Trossard was an idiot. He shouldn't have done that, especially after what happened with Declan. But I thought the Declan sending off was a little unfair. The Saliba one is a 50-50. We've seen situations, Chelsea versus Liverpool. We saw a situation with Van der Ven yesterday as well. And then the kicking the ball away. We've been yellow carded for that, sent off afterwards. We saw Luis Diaz do that yesterday. Is it incompetency? Is it inconsistency? Some Arsenal fans are being lambasted for their opinions about it. You saw Van Dijk yesterday kicking Havertz. Nothing happened. The corner at the end, Jesus gets a yellow card. It was a clear corner. And then, of course, the biggest one of all for Arsenal fans was the Kivior situation and the third goal. Talk me through it. Are we crazy?
A little bit crazy, with respect, not you personally. You always speak sense. But yeah, I mean, I go on some of the Arsenal fans forums. I talk to Arsenal fans, and the conspiracy theorists and conspiracy theorists do run right. I mean, we can argue about the competence and the consistency of the officials, but they're not corrupt. I mean, let's have a mature debate on that. And I think you can go to any fan base in the Premier League, and they'll be saying, "Oh, VAR out to get us." Have a word with Wolves fans. Have a word with Nottingham Forest fans, and you could argue that Wolves, Gary O'Neill, if you want to look at managers who've had a rough run of decisions go against them, I mean, he's probably number one. So yeah, I don't buy that. Where I completely agree with you, yesterday I thought the Kivior one was an absolute nonsense. It wasn't even a foul. And Anthony Taylor is one of probably our two best referees, him and Michael Oliver. Why on earth was he blowing up so early? I know he was there and he saw it, but just let it develop. It wasn't a foul. It was a huge moment in Arsenal's season, obviously in the game as well. I actually thought Arsenal, I think of points, fair enough. I think they did well. I was slightly surprised by some of the criticism of sort of Arteta or whatever, but I thought it was ridiculous. And because I initially thought, well, maybe it's for Havertz's foot up, but he wasn't. He was lifting it over the goalkeeper. No Liverpool players were appealing, and then Gabriel Jesus, reacted. And I thought, well, that's a good goal, and that's a good story. And I just thought it was poor. I'm not a huge Kivior fan, but he went for that ball. Szoboszlai Szoboszlai didn't even jump. Szoboszlai was, probably the most guilty party of all, and he didn't complain. So I think on that one, I thought it was inexplicable that Anthony Taylor reacted the way he did. On the others, Canate on Martinelli as well. Did he get the ball? I didn't have so much of a problem with all of those. But just quickly on the red cards, silly mistakes. They were all red cards, or it's two of them second yellow card offences. So I'm sure Declan Rice will accept that, and he'll learn from that. And Arsenal aren't the only team who've had players sent off.
Yeah, Rebecca, I mean, you kind of see it from you're the broadcaster, with the boys in the studio, but you're also a football fan. What is your take on these situations, but also the officiating in general, the crew at NBC? What have you guys been thinking?
Well, I do think officiating in general is always going to be inconsistent, because we're dealing with 20 human beings, or however many human beings there are in that referees group. And it's a different one every week, and there's 4 of them on the game. And they're 4 different human beings. So they're going to see things differently. And yeah, of course they make mistakes. And it drives me nuts when they make mistakes. But I don't know how we ever think we're going to make things better when we're dealing with human beings. We aren't dealing with robots. That's the first thing. The kicking the ball away thing, the Diaz thing, for a second on that, and I might be wrong, Henry, you might know this, but I'm fairly certain the rule is not about kicking the ball away. The rule is about delaying the restart. And Declan Rice delayed the restart when he got that second yellow, and same with Trossard, according to the ref. I don't think Diaz technically delayed the restart. Wasn't there an injury, or it was? I feel like it's a nuanced thing. I think you have to, if you kick the ball away, if play was ready to start straight away, you're delaying the restart of play. But if there's an injury or play isn't ready to start, then you're not actually delaying the restart. So I guess you can kick the ball away. It's kind of I think it's a slightly nuanced thing, which again, it actually leads me on to another point, Sophie. And I'm not saying I know every single law of the game. And there are times we've sat in studio. In fact, we had a moment a couple of weeks ago with a corner where we suddenly realized after a few minutes, oh yeah, you can't be offside at a corner. We're going mad. There are so many laws of the game. I don't think everybody knows them all. And that leads to fans getting on their high horses and getting super mad about situations. And I get messages all the time about this. And I'm thinking, that's not the law. And I think part of the problem is there are so many laws, and I guess there have to be. And it's hard to keep on top of them, especially as they change them every single preseason. There's like 10 more things they're tweaking. I think it happens to all clubs. Arsenal, one of the biggest clubs, so they get more of the headlines. They have lots more fans than some of the more middling ranking clubs like my team. So therefore, it's louder shouting about it. It's an obvious thing to say, but that's true. I mean, West Ham getting a penalty yesterday, which I don't think was a penalty against Manchester United, the Delict one. Normally that happens to Man United, by the way. Normally it's Manchester United who get a dodgy penalty at the end of a game because they're a big club. But there isn't as big a shout about it because it's West Ham, right? But I just think that the smaller clubs happens to Palace all the time, but no one's listening when I shout about it because there's not as many people shouting about it, and the media don't care as much about it. So yes, there are frustrating moments, and referees are always going to make mistakes. But honestly, we got to be so careful, because without refs, it's very worrying, very, very worrying. Just be careful. They're human blooming beings.
I agree about like the interpretation of the law, and is the issue the law? And at the same time, you see such good officiating in the Champions League. When you're watching, the League Cup game we played against Bolton, it was just, there's no VAR. When there is technology, it just seems, Henry, that the stakes are so high. And the fact that we're still having these conversations when you're talking about survival in the Premier League, inches for winning the Premier League title, it's just not good enough. What needs to happen to improve this?
Well, I think if the debate was more sort of rooted in facts and explanation, I think if the officials, either the officials came out and spoke to Rebecca or her reporters after the match and say, right, there are 3 main issues. Can we just clear up points 1, 2, and 3? Just give us the law. Half the referees you talk to don't really want the publicity, but actually all of them hate the abuse they get, hate the fact that they're actually the ones who do know the laws, and they're having, you know, sort of a lot of real vile stuff thrown at them online, and they may not look at it, but their kids may do, their friends may do. It gets passed on, and then you see this level of abuse and the lack of respect for referees, and then we're surprised that there are issues at grassroots level with, you know, promising referees in their late teen years just getting all this abuse from players and coaches and parents on the touchline, and then giving up, and then we worry about the sort of pathway of good referees actually floating to the top, and it becomes a catch-22 situation. So I mean, I think PGMO and IFAB have got to grow up a little bit, look at American sports, and actually, I mean, I went to an American football game the other day at Wembley. I don't really understand gridiron, but I had a mate with me who was just saying, oh, they're kicking that way or whatever. But I also could understand certain decisions that would be made because the referee suddenly flicks his mic on and actually sort of, you know, actually explains what's going on. And I mean, Rebecca will tell me, Sophie, you'll tell me better than I'll know. But apparently they've been doing that since the mid-70s. And we're sort of our way through to the 21st century. And they
do it in MLS as well, Henry. They do it in MLS. It's great. Yeah. It's really cool. Okay, so Henry's going to have to duck out, but before he does, Rebecca, you crossed paths with Henry a few years before you were even a broadcaster.
I know, a few years ago, just a few years ago. No, Henry knows the story. I've told him the story before, but the listeners, the viewers might like it just very quickly before Henry goes. I think it was 1997, Henry, and I was at school. I was 16, and I was at a school in West London. Now, you have to tell me, Henry, was it your goddaughter or niece, Jessica? Or just niece. A friend of the family?
Cousin, niece? Yeah, I've got millions Jessica of cousins,
Green?
But yeah, one of those.
Okay, yeah. Cousin, some relative of Henry's was in my year. And we were in that stage at sixth form where it was like, come in, if you have anyone relatively interesting in your family or extended family, can they come in and please do a talk about their careers? And being the only girl of 92 in my year who knew anything about football and liked football, when Henry Winter of the Daily Telegraph walked in, I nearly fell off my chair. I was so starstruck. I'm like, and no offense to Henry, but everybody else just was like, it's just a journalist from a newspaper. I was like, no, it's Henry Winter. Sunday Supplement hadn't started yet, but Henry, you were still very much present in any sort of football supporter's life. And he sat and he did a Q&A. I think I probably asked all the questions. And it was so funny. Huh?
They're all Palace questions.
They probably were. They probably were. And that was in 97. And then, you know, years later, I managed to luckily cross paths with Henry many times before on different shows in England before I moved out here. So isn't that cool? It's like, God knows, 20 something years ago.
Rebecca, you've told the nice part of the story, because I can remember when I came into one of your many programs early on in your amazing career, which is fantastic to see, just sort of, you know, blossoming, taking over the world, taking over Hollywood. But I came into one of your programs, and I was sort of being sort of my normal cocky self. And then you said there was quiet on the studio, and there were about sort of 5 or 6 or technicians or staff working there. And you said, "Oh, it's great to see you. I haven't seen you since you came to talk to us at school." And of course, they all burst out laughing. And I thought, "Oh, thanks for making me feel really old."
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Henry. You look exactly the same as the day you walked into Notting Hill and Ely High School for girls.
Well, hardly, but my cousins have remembered that, and whenever I see them, they always remind me. I said, "Oh, you know, you're old man."
Anyway, I love it.
Lovely talking to you.
It was great to see you, Henry.
Program as ever. Yeah, nice to see you all thriving.
Thanks, Henry. Thank you so much. Take care, mate, and I appreciate your time. Good luck with all the 10 HAG stuff today.
Yeah.
All right, that's Henry Winter. You can please go subscribe to his Substack, henrywinter.football. Just an absolute legend. Speaking of legend, let's carry on here, Rebecca. What did you think of Arsenal yesterday against Liverpool? I actually walked away from that thinking, damn, I really felt like a little bit of a loss when the final whistle went. But I was really proud of them for how they handled everything, considering the adversity.
And that seems to be the theme generally with Arteta. Seems proud but frustrated. Saka came on the set yesterday, was as disappointed as I've seen him in a long time. We get to interview him quite a lot, and I couldn't believe how disappointed he was, bearing in mind it was a draw. Having said that, I think, you know, Liverpool were better second half. I don't think Liverpool were very good. I was disappointed with Liverpool. I thought they were sort of there for the taking, to be honest. My biggest, well, one of my big takeaways, Soph, was my concern at centre half in the backup role. Now, I know you have Calafiori and I know you have Ben White, and I know Calafiori especially plays centre half more than Ben White has done recently. And they can both play fullback and they can both play centre half. But if you are moving 3 players, which he did for the starting lineup, out of their regular positions in order to not play Kivior, and then you have to put Kivior on and say to him, sorry, mate, we actually didn't want you to play so badly. I put 3 players out of position, but if you could go on, that would be great. And then I don't think for the goal, he completely misjudged the flight of the ball. He's obviously not good enough to play for Arsenal. That's a problem for me. I don't think you have a number 1 backup to Gabriel and Saliba in a centre half, unless you take somebody out of their regular fullback roles. So Kivior for me is a big problem. I didn't think Havertz was very good yesterday. I think you're missing Odegaard, that creativity. But overall, you just had to be must not lose. It just had to be must not lose, and you didn't. And so that's all that matters.
Yeah. I thought Mikel Merino was great yesterday. And the midfield handled Thomas Partey having to go to right back really, really well. I thought Declan
and Partey
Rice
going to right back as well. Sorry, so Partey just slotting right into right back was impressive. I mean, I know he's done it before many, many times, but that was good. That was good. I thought he was very good.
Yeah, he was for many Arsenal fans. He was player of the match, and you know, it's not easy. I agree with you. I thought Ben White was brilliant when he, had to move into the centre back role. And Havertz is really suffering without Odegaard. And I'm not here to kill Kai Havertz. I think he's been brilliant for us and resurgent at Arsenal. But we're starting to see what we're looking like without that creativity of Martin Odegaard. You've seen young players come through at Palace, and there's a lot of Arsenal fans screaming for Waneri to start. Stevie Nicol said on the show, he goes, why would you set him up to fail without core players around him? And we've seen players suffer from that before. I mean, even before the Palace-Tottenham game, Tottenham fans were going crazy about this young kid more. And there's this expectation, like, James Maddison saying he's Neymar.
I know. Cheers. Thanks a lot. If you're here and you're like, oh, great, cheers. Now where do I go from that? Thanks
exactly. So, but as time goes and Odegaard is out and that creativity is lacking and Trossard maybe isn't that guy, do you play Waneri? Do you go there?
I think you fully 100% have to trust Arteta's decision on that. And none of us are there on the training ground. None of us know the kid as a person. Is he? I thought Skelly, the young kid who came on
Lewis Skelly,
night,
that's great.
I thought he looked really confident, really confident, and very much not out of place. I haven't seen enough of Waneri to know whether or not he's good enough to start. I think Arteta sees him every day and knows. And if he's not putting him in yet as a starter, which he's not, there's a reason why he's obviously not ready. And Stephen Nichol's right. You mustn't set him up to fail. I mean, you really mustn't. That would be remiss and dereliction of duty on Mikel Arteta's side if he started him before he was ready. So I think we just have to trust Arteta on that. And I'm not Arteta's biggest fan, but let's trust him.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the kind of the Premier League title race.
Yeah.
I've been saying on our show, Bex, that I don't think anyone has played great football yet. And which is kind of, when you look at the mistakes that we've made and the fact that, the red cards, we've put ourselves in a bit of a hole. Yesterday, Henry making it clear there was no foul. All those, it kind of really grates on you because it should be closer and tighter than it is.
Yeah.
Regardless of all of that, can you see Liverpool or Arsenal being able to topple City? Is there going to be an adversity moment in addition to them losing Rodri? What's your take?
I'm looking at the top of the table right now, and it's 5 points between City and you guys, and 5 points between first and fourth because Villa are on 18 points with you. It's a little more spread out than I thought it would be. It's a little more spread out than I would like it to be as a neutral at this stage. And the last person you want on top of the table in late October is Manchester City, because we know that City gets stronger from January onwards. So the last thing you need is to be chasing them before January. My problem, Soph, is that I'm a romantic and I also like change. And we need a different Premier League title winner. So my heart and my entire body, barring the brain area, says yes to your question. Arsenal and Liverpool, I can see them doing it. I can see one of them doing it. But that's really my hope. My head answers no. My head answers no. You know, when you've got Kivior coming off the bench and then you look at City's replacements and the drop down is just not there. It never has been for 10 years. There is no drop down because it's like the first team and the second team are virtually the same level of standard. You know, he has so many incredible players to choose from. Yes, he's got Oscar Bob, he's got Rodri, De Bruyne is still injured. But last season they had De Bruyne out and Haaland out, and they still won the league for stretches of time. So as much as I would like to say yes, and it needs to happen. The Premier League needs Arsenal and Liverpool to challenge Man City right until the end. Let's throw Villa in there. Let's have Villa, but I don't think they'll do it. But let's have Villa challenging as well. We need that. It's got to change, guys. It has to change, or we're ending up like flipping Spain. And I think it will change when Pep leaves. And I'm hoping, as much as I love him, I'm hoping that is this coming summer. I really do think the Premier League needs Pep Guardiola to leave, which is the most ridiculous thing to say because Pep Guardiola has made the Premier League in the last 10 years what it is. He has changed English football from the parks on a Saturday all the way up. Everyone's trying to play out from the back. Everyone's throwing their full back into midfield. It's amazing what he's done. He's probably affected English football more than any other figure in the last 50 years. But he's got to go. He's got to go because we've got to change things up. So my head says no, my heart says yes.
I love that. You know, a lot of Arsenal fans want to win it while he's still manager.
I'm sure that's a good point. Yeah.
You know, man, could have been Premier League champions the last 2 seasons. Or for me, you know, mental. This is what's worried me about those red cards. I thought we'd evolved mentally. But yesterday against Liverpool, I thought I saw that, you know, players came in. Arteta had them well prepared. There's a long way to go yet, so I'm not giving up hope. I'm going to get you out on this one. What has been the most surprising and least surprising thing for you so far this season?
Before I answer that, I just have to go on what you just said about the red cards. I do think, sorry, Soph, just to go on quickly.
No, please.
We looked into some of the tallies of yellows as well. Chelsea, I think, have 30 before yesterday's game. I don't know how many they have now. Arsenal, you guys had 18 before yesterday's game. Yes, you've had more red cards than everybody else. But I think there would be a bigger trouble and bigger problem mentally if they were all flying into crazy tackles. The silliness, it's slightly extenuating. I'm not saying they weren't red cards because they were. But for me, they were. But I just think each one has to be taken as an extenuating circumstance in itself. So I'm not too concerned about, Arsenal have no discipline. I ask those questions in the studio and I have to get those answers. But I personally I'm not too worried about that. Okay, most surprising and least surprising thing of the season. Least surprising is that Manchester City are top. I mean, come on, guys. Let's just, you know, that's just the least surprising. Most surprising of the season has to be the fact that Chelsea have gone from a laughing stock maybe 8 weeks ago, to everybody, to a man going, oh, I see what they're doing. Oh, no, I see what they're doing. No, that's great. No, their transfer policy. Oh, it's great. No, it's great. It's such an amazingly quick turnaround. It's hilarious. I mean, honestly, the same people 8 weeks ago were laughing at them, taking the mickey out of them, saying they don't know what they're doing at the top of the club. You know, they're ruining football. They're stockpiling players. And now 8 weeks later, they're saying, actually, you know what? I think Todd Bowley knows what he's doing, or certainly Lawrence Winstanley and Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart. That for me has been the biggest surprise that Chelsea are pushing. And actually, I'm quite enjoying it. And I'm not a Chelsea fan, quite enjoying it because, again, I like change. I like things to be new and different. So that's my most surprising thing.
Yeah. We'd appreciate a little less enthusiasm there on the old Chelsea, Rebecca Lowe.
So you've got enough credit out of me because Palace beat Tottenham yesterday. So everyone watching, you're welcome. All right.
Listen, if I could buy you a beer at lunchtime today, I will. In fact, I'll Venmo you. You can buy you and Paul a beer. I've got to put this one up because I just don't think this is true. Dale, ask Rebecca why she isn't Arteta's biggest fan. Can't let that slide by. She's Go on. I think, have you evolved? Because we've spoken a few times about Mikel. You talked about how cold he was. I think his press conferences, remember we said, and you were like, he's got to endear himself more to the media.
I still don't think he is, Soph. I still don't think he is
Really?
endearing. Let me say,
It's
when I say I'm not his biggest fan, that's probably not a great. Yeah, do you think? I mean, to be fair, I'm probably judging him more on his post-match and pre-match interviews than I don't watch a lot. I watch some. I don't watch a lot of his press conferences because if I did that, I'd have to watch 20 managers every week, and trust me, that like take 2 days. Blooming heck, especially Sean Dyche's, which go on forever. But no, I when I say I'm not his biggest fan, that doesn't mean I don't like him. That quite literally means I'm not his biggest fan. I respect everything he's done. I love the fact they've kept patience with him when there was a time where you and I had a conversation. I distinctly remember where I was when we were like, both of us were like, I think he's got to go. And that was about 3 years ago. So I massively respect everything he's done. He's obviously knows what he's doing and he's clearly incredibly talented. I just find him personally very difficult to relate to. He comes across to me like somebody who hasn't got time for anybody outside that dressing room. And maybe that's because you have to be that way. But I'm not sure if you. I don't know. I'm not sure if you do. I like a manager to be slightly more in the real world. Like Thomas Frank is maybe an extreme example because he is just the most normal Premier League manager I've ever come across. But I think this is why Arsenal fans love Arteta, because he has a massive wall around him, and everybody inside the wall is all in that dressing room, right? And everybody outside the wall he doesn't want anything to do with. And I just can't warm to him. I can't warm to that, but I have huge respect. So as I go back to saying, I'm not his biggest fan, doesn't mean I don't like him. Is that
right? Yes. The last time we spoke, I loved it because you said this is how because when you guys were pitch side and you were like, this is how Mikel Arteta's list every day. Arsenal, the wife and kids. And I thought that was brilliant. And that is the kind of, I actually said about 3 years ago, he's not very likable, right? And I've grown to like him and I've seen him evolve. Like in his presses, he's very clever, the way he handles certain questions.
He is. But you like him more though, Soph, I think, because he always won you the title for the last 2 years. Yeah, that's very likable, he's very likable. But I think he's you're right. He's definitely warmed up a bit, but I still think he doesn't let anyone in. And I want to be let in. But as all Arsenal fans will say, they don't care. He's doing everything Arsenal. And that's all that matters to him. And that's fair enough.
Okay, very cool. And by the way, a lot of our listeners were picking Forest as their surprise, which has been brilliant to see.
Completely. I mean, you asked me for one, I gave you Chelsea, but Forest, of course, I love that story. I'm not Nuno's biggest fan either, but I mean, he hates the press. But Forest, and of course, another big surprise, Palace were in the relegation zone until last weekend, but everything's fine. We're going to be fine. Don't worry. Everyone calm down. Eddie Nketiah, stop. We'll talk about him another day because he hasn't earned the right to start. Anyway, I could say a lot.
I'm just saying we stole the money. Speaking of not likable, how is it working with Gary Neville? Before you go, tell everyone.
I love Gary. I know all of you people watching and listening hate him because he's Man United, and especially from that era, you all think he hates Arsenal. But honestly, I don't think he does. It's really enjoyable. He is unlike a human I've ever met before in my life. I mean, he is everything that you think he is. He's a workaholic. He's intense. His knowledge is incredible. So for me to be able to work with somebody of that ilk, who I have grown up watching, he's only a few years older than me, is a real honor. I am absolutely loving it. It's a challenge every week. We're recording tomorrow, so nobody can get hold of him today for obvious reasons. Phone is probably, off the hook, but I'm excited to be able to interview him tomorrow on the show. So yeah, it's great. I'm loving it.
That's going to be a corker. It's called Soccer US. They're on Instagram. Find them on YouTube. You can see the show online. And Rebecca, as always, having you on the show is a joy. And thank you so much. I know you're a very busy woman, but we always appreciate you and your time. And I'll keep sending over. Did you buy the corn peeler? Did you get that?
Oh my God, that corn peeler is insane. No, I haven't got that. Did you get it?
Not yet. I've got it on the Amazon list.
Yeah, put it in the cart. Save it till later.
Put it in the cart. My January transfer window cart.
Tell everybody what you do. You send me every week. Every week, Sophie sends me. I'll tell her. Sophie sends me videos of like gadgets and also hacks for like kitchen stuff. Honestly, we have the best time on. Sophie sends me these things.
They're great, aren't they? I love it.
Incredible. I tried to open the bag of crisps the other day the way it told us to. Couldn't quite make it work. Did you do it? I couldn't make it work. It wouldn't. No, it was a Haribo. It was a Haribo where you're supposed to open it. I did it, but it just didn't work.
I had Tony do it. I was useless, so I got Tony to do it. So yeah. I'll keep them coming though.
Keep them coming, girl. Keep them coming.
And get love to the boys, and you take care.
You.
Have a good one. Take care.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye. Bye, Rebecca.
Bye,
Thank you so much. That is Rebecca Lowe, and we're grateful to Rebecca for her time. Thank you so much to Rebecca and to Henry. I thought Henry's take on the third goal was brilliant, and we all have differing opinions, but I love the fact that, he thought that was a perfectly good goal. And that was annoying, that one. And yesterday, when I kind of went on air right after the game, sometimes I think it's a good thing and a bad thing to do a show immediately after. Maybe we'll start doing them later, because when I went back and watched the game and I saw that again, I was incensed. The Van Dijk kicking of Havertz, ridiculous. The Konate thing, I didn't think there was much in that. The corner at the end, it was well worth the yellow card for Jesus. That was absolutely ridiculous. But the challenge, and Szoboszlai was kind of doing a Harry Kane. He's trying to get away with it there. And Kivior, who has been much maligned, by the way, and I know that he was at fault for the goal. But also, we did become very vulnerable when Timber and Gabriel went off. But as I said on the show yesterday, I am not going to kill the players. I thought that we did enough to win that game yesterday. Liverpool are a good team. They're going to counter. They're going to catch you off. And mistakes are going to happen when you have a back four that hasn't really played together. But that decision was ridiculous. And I'm glad that Henry made it clear about that. Another great show. Thank you so much, you guys. Please don't forget to tell your mates. She is great. She's brilliant. And, I interviewed Rebecca probably first time 11 years ago. And I love seeing her flourish. And she's always a good friend of the show. And her opinions are authentic and honest. And, takes a lot to come on an Arsenal podcast and say, don't really dig Mikel Arteta. And Gary is everywhere. Well, I paid it back there, didn't I? Speaking of people you don't like, Gary Neville. All right, brilliant stuff. I'm proud of the players too. Very well said. An early Monday madness for you. Tell everyone about it. Don't forget to always visit our friends at Football Prizes. There's something new coming up today, and there'll be a midweek musings show as well on Wednesday. And yeah, let me just actually take a look. By the way, our top 6 record, I wanted to point that out to everybody. We haven't lost to, sorry, Chief Like Officer, I'm just going to get your comment off here. The last loss to a top 6 side was April 2023. That is incredible, which is why I keep saying that we will not get the respect until we win the Premier League. We can have all the wins we want against these top 6 teams, but until we win the big one, we are not going to get it. So yeah, we'll talk more about that this week. The Football Prizes competition this week is a David Seaman signed shirt. Go to footballprizes.co.uk. I haven't put the image up yet. That just came through to me as I was on air. But please do go check it out. It's a David Seaman signed shirt. Plus, there is 23 opportunities for another instant win as well. So go visit our friends at Football Prizes. And it's a really great way to build up your memorabilia and your collection. All right, kids. Good stuff. I hope you're all well. Hit the likes before you clear off. Thank you so much, Lone Star. Great show, says Alistair. Put it on rewind. The good thing about technology is you can replay. Great stuff. Nuances of Fate. Great show. Don't agree with most of the takes, but great show. That's the beautiful thing about it, isn't it? We don't have to agree on everything. But to have the caliber of Henry and Rebecca on the show giving their perspectives is an epic thing. Okay, I am out. Be sure to take care of yourselves. Look out on the old Twitter sphere and also on the community page on YouTube for the next live show. Until then, my squaddies, keep sharing, keep supporting, keep loving, and don't forget to tell your loved ones you love them. And until the next time, at ease, everyone, at ease.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
I love to leave you with just baby reminders. Keep the faith. That's Bon